Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I am your host, Gabriel Cardona, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, the amazing man with the most cats in crypto, Connor Daly. What is up, my friend?
Hey, Gabriel. For our YouTube viewers, the setting might look a little different today. I'm actually on the road, out visiting some future in-laws. So I no physical cats with me, but I do have my cat T-shirt to keep me company.
They're there
I
in
love
spirit. They're there in spirit. All right. Thank you. Nice to see you. Safe travels on your journey. I see a safe journey. I see a safe return. So as I mentioned a couple weeks back, one of the amazing aspects of my job is that I get to travel around the world and I get to meet people who are genuinely having an impact with the blockchain. And as I've said many times before, I believe that the blockchain will end up being as transformative as the web and potentially even greater. And in the same way that the web democratized information and made it ubiquitous, the blockchain has the potential to do the same thing for finance or for money. And that is just the potential to have a really radical impact on the human condition. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do, and one of the reasons I've been working in this industry for as long as I have. And maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, on my radar, I started hearing about like this little renaissance that was happening in blockchain out in Wyoming. And so I think it was 2017, 2018, I first made my way to Laramie, Wyoming, to the WYO Hackathon, where I met today's guest. So now allow me to introduce the absolute amazing Caitlin Long. Let me give a rundown of her creds. So Caitlin is a 22-year Wall Street veteran. We won't hold that against her. Wink, wink. Bitcoin since 2012, though, so hardcore cypherpunk, and definitely understands the movement in a very, very deep way. She was the governor, maybe she still is, the Governor Gordon appointee to the Wyoming Blockchain Select Committee. And she's also the founder and CEO of Avanti Bank, which is one of the things we want to deep dive on today. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing, Caitlin?
Hey, great to see you again. It's my honor to be here. Yes. And yes, you've been out. You're an old timer as WYO Hackathon participants go, and
Yes.
you attract a lot of developers to come to the hackathon. So obviously put that on everyone's radar screen, because you can actually get access to Gabriel and some pretty rock star people there in a relatively small group.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's one of the best ROI hackathons I've been to, because it's in Laramie, and not a lot of people find their way to Laramie unless you're specifically going there. But the quality of people there is just A+. Everybody's A+. So when you go there, you just get to network and have FaceTime with so many high level people like Caitlin. I got to sit there and chat with her for 30 or 45 minutes about Avanti and about Avalanche and about the entire crypto journey. And it was just, doesn't feel rushed. It feels very personal, and it's just amazing. I'm a huge fan of Wyoming. It's absolutely beautiful. Driving from Denver to Laramie is one of the most beautiful drives that there is out there, for sure.
Yeah.
So so go ahead.
Well, I was going to add, just as a little pitch, part of the reason you came in the very beginning is the prize pot was so high, because it's a nonprofit, and the university gives us access to the facilities for free, and basically we just have to cover the hard costs. So there's a big pot of money that goes to the developers, and so as you talk about ROI for developers, I know we're kind of giving a heavy pitch for this, but you and I both have put a lot of heart and soul into this. It's a nonprofit event, and it's people like us who are there who make it what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe the pot was 117,000 last time. Is that the correct value?
Yeah, and 2 years ago it was 200,000. Obviously, with COVID and everything, sure. Some things have changed. But it's
a significant amount. It's non-trivial. Like, that's an angel round to start a startup. I'm sure many great startups have started on less than that amount of money. You know what I mean?
And we've had more VCs come this year as well, because there's we're now calling it the WYO Hackathon, which is part of Wyoming Blockchain Stampede. And there are actually a couple of VC pitch parallel events that run as well. I think this past year we had about 450 people come through, which again, we're punching way above our weight class for a relatively small place, for sure. And it's because we're doing so much for the industry, broadly speaking.
Yeah, and so that's really what we want to talk to. I mean, there's so many questions I could get into, and I know Connor in the past has told me, like, indirectly or directly, let's focus more on what they're doing for the crypto. But I love to dive into people's pasts. To me, like, it's always their journey is so interesting to me. So let's at least touch on the journey. So you are from Laramie, or you're from Wyoming?
I'm from Laramie. Yeah, from the University of Wyoming. My dad was the head of the electrical engineering department.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm a failed electrical engineer. I want to be one of you guys, but the math got me, and I wasn't going to get straight A's. So I keep joking I'll go back and finish.
There's a parallel universe where you're designing hardware wallets, basically.
Yeah, you don't need, you trust me, you don't want me to do that right now. But as Gabriel, you've heard me say many times, the developers are the most important people in the ecosystem, and people like me who are not developers, who are mere mortals, we're the ones who can help make the legal system backwards compatible with what you guys are doing. And that's that's kind of my contribution to the open source community, is helping to get the legal and regulatory clarity to let you guys shine and not have the law try to influence the tech.
Got it. So yeah,
that's so huge. Yeah. I was just to say, because it's so easy as a developer to just build and just ignore all the consequences of the outside world, but it always comes a knocking eventually. And it might not be this year, but especially with the kind of the crackdown on like our tokens, securities, things like that, like engineering decisions that can seem very trivial to somebody who's just in the weeds can really come back to bite you. And so it's really important to have these kind of guidelines and have people like you on the front lines of all the other non-technical domains, trying to make sure that people can continue to innovate, because there's a real possibility in the future that, you know, that there is going to be a regulatory war or something like that that really slows crypto. And you know, having warriors on the front lines like you definitely makes me feel better about our future.
Well, I think it's already starting. We were chatting kind of in the green room before we started, that, you know, a lot of in the Avalanche community in particular, there are a lot of new startups with folks who may or may not have been around 4 years ago in the previous bull market. And something happened 4 years ago that if you got some battle scars, you'll understand. But if you're new to it, you might not know about it, which is that all of a sudden in the fall of 2017, the banks just started closing bank accounts for startups en masse. And there was, from what we can tell, a directive that went out to the banks to review their customer lists to see who was participating in crypto, because it was deemed to be high risk. And what happened is a lot of banks just went through and culled their accounts for anybody who was dealing in crypto. And then you had a few banks try to specialize in it very successfully, like Silvergate or Signature. But really, there's just a small handful of banks that service this industry still today. And there's a leftover hangover from that. And so the reason why I'm bringing that up is we're going to see that again. It's starting again. And there's not like a real announcement that happens, because the way bank regulation works is the supervisors, when they're doing their exams of the banks, are the ones who are implicitly pressuring because of the questions that they're asking. And it's going to make the banks deemed higher risk. And so the banks decide they don't want to do those activities anymore. And so, you know, I'm just letting folks know this is coming again. I'm reading the tea leaves because I know how to read bank speak, and it's coming again. And so harden your business. I mean, you know, talk to your bank, make sure that they're not going to do that to you. And one of the things that determined whether some of the startups failed or survived, unfortunately, 4 years ago, was whether the startups had a durable bank relationship. And so one of the things a lot of people took away from that experience, the startups who were starting companies, is make sure that you get more than one bank account. And, you know, I mean, that turned out it's crazy that we have to think this way, but it turned out in our industry that in many ways that turned on. I remember having a conversation with Jesse Powell at Kraken that, you know, they saw that 4 years ago in the previous bull market in 2013 as well. And part of the reason why the big exchanges that are around today are as successful as they are, and some of the smaller ones fell by the wayside, is exactly this. You had to think about, where's the attack vector on your business from the regulators? And one attack vector on this entire industry is the bank relationships.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that kind of
huge.
perfectly leads us into why we brought you here today to talk about your amazing new startups. So you are the founder and CEO of Avanti Bit.
Mm-hmm. Avanti Bank. Yep.
Avanti Bank. Yes. So please just give us the super high level, and then, you know, drill down to the problem you guys are solving.
Well, we're trying to break through, and we're not totally there yet, but we are optimistic. We're going to get there. We'll have some announcements relatively soon. We will be operating in 2022, and we will be specializing in this industry. So bringing additional U.S. dollar deposit capacity. By the way, when I'm talking about the bank accounts that were closed, this was not for crypto. This was just for U.S. dollars. I mean, I think a lot of us who are old timers have either had bank accounts closed on us, or we know people who've had bank accounts closed on us. It's kind of like the SIM swap thing. Like, pretty much everybody went through that, and it's going to happen again. And with the bank account closures. And so Avanti, part of the reason Wyoming set out to create a special purpose depository institution charter is exactly this. Let's create a safe and sound way that's non-threatening to the bank regulators on how to plug crypto into the traditional US dollar system, and do it in a way that ticks all the boxes from a regulatory perspective. So we are a bridge between the traditional and the new decentralized worlds. And yes, as a bank, every bank has to comply with the Bank Secrecy Act. So all the Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering, OFAC, the requirements, every single bank has to deal with that. Some of the things that everybody complains the most about with their bank relationships in this industry are those things. But it's not the bank's choice. It's kind of like, everyone likes to complain about how awful the service from the airlines can be. And the truth is, it's not really the airline's fault. Most of the time, it's the regulations they have to comply with. And that's true here for the Bank Secrecy Act stuff too. It just, whether we agree with it or not, it is the law, and the banks have to comply with it. So, we are absolutely going to be specializing in servicing this industry, though. So we are going to be deemed high risk, and we know that we're going to get more scrutiny than the average startup bank. But what we're trying to do is solve the following problem. There's only about $80 billion, per my estimate, of US dollar banking capacity serving the entire $3 trillion, give or take, crypto industry right now. And as you guys know, because Gabriel, we talked a lot about stablecoins when we were in Laramie back in September. The stablecoin market has voted with its feet. It is 99% US dollar, and so the fact that there's only 80 billion of US dollar deposit capacity on 3-ish trillion of assets is kind of a problem. It is a single source of failure exposure for our industry. Ryan Selkis at Masari started saying that 2 years ago, and I just got the email today. He's got his annual report out, and I haven't had time to look at it, but I suspect that he's going to say, again, this is a bottleneck issue. It's a single point of failure issue. And it might be kind of crazy for your listeners to hear me talk about all this US dollar stuff, because aren't we trying to disrupt the US dollar financial system? Yes, we are. We're trying to make it better. But to be honest, the two-way bridge matters right now. You've got to be able to get dollars, got to be able to get value from the traditional industry into the crypto industry. And the wider that bridge and the easier the flows go back and forth. We know full well that the flows are going to be mostly one way, but the wider that bridge is, the more durable it is for this industry. It takes one of the attack vectors for this industry off the table.
Yeah, and I think for DAOs that run like real businesses that aren't just maybe necessarily a social group, you have to pay suppliers, you have to pay vendors, you have to do all these things that require cash because Cloudflare doesn't accept payment in crypto. Right. Hiring somebody to do some random like computing tasks. These things all take US dollars. Payroll. So how do you actually manage that payroll?
Paying your electricity bill.
Requirements. Yep. Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the bridge needs to go both ways. And this is a huge problem for people. I think banks. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting the perspective you brought up, because I'm familiar more with the personal perspective of, I've heard a lot of friends will try to get mortgages and they'll try to like use their crypto as an asset, which banks won't accept or something like that. Right. So you can't, so you're like, oh, I have a lot of money, but I can't let the bank won't let me, won't treat me like I have a lot of money. Or, but it's really interesting to hear this perspective on, from a company building perspective, how does your relationship with the bank, affect your ability to do business? And I'm learning a lot about how precarious that is just right now.
Well, one of the things that the U.S. has done, unfortunately, is to say that you're not a valid business if you don't have a bank account. And the reason they say that, they don't say that directly, but the reason they say that is that you have to remit your payroll withholding taxes to the IRS electronically through your bank. So if you don't have a bank account, then you can't comply with your IRS withholding requirements, right? So yeah, that's why I say this is an attack vector. I mean, Wyoming really was very thoughtful about where are going to be the attack vectors on this industry. And, you know, with Bitcoin at $2,000, the attack vectors are very different than with Bitcoin at $10,000. And now with Bitcoin, you know, having topped 65,000, the attack vectors are different. They're going to be different again at 100,000 or 1 million, right? And so, and so we really tried to think through, okay, we're trying to future-proof this. So yes, let's give some legal status to the assets and say, yes, they're property. So that helps eventually get to the point where you can pledge these as collateral for a mortgage. We're not there yet, but the legal regime is in place in Wyoming. And we're starting to recognize some of the new types of business entities. We should talk about the DAO LLC. That is a misnomer. I'll acknowledge that up front because DAOs are supposed to be decentralized. So how is it that you can have a limited liability company, which is an LLC, that's decentralized? And the answer is you really don't. But what you do have with the DAO LLC is a means by which you can create a legal entity that can open a bank account and can do business with suppliers, can pay suppliers, can, you know, send the, you know, the W-9 form to verify that, yes, you're a legitimate business and you can get a bank account. And then what can happen over time is that the DAO can vote itself to decentralize. But there does have to be a human being involved. So it's not a true DAO. I acknowledge it's not a true DAO. But what's the benefit of Wyoming, of registering as a Wyoming DAO LLC? You start to be able to actually take the old, you know, industrial age corporate form. The business entity form of the industrial age is the corporation. And the corporation has, you know, very specific governance documents, and all the agreements are written in paper. And you say, okay, well, maybe we don't have to have the operating agreement be in paper anymore. Maybe the operating agreement can be in code. And if there is a dispute between the members of the LLC and it's taken to a court, the judge has to interpret the code. That's what Wyoming did. Nobody else has done that yet. And Wyoming, just as of yesterday, launched its what's called a chancery court, which is a business-only court that is a court of special jurisdiction to handle business disputes. So you're not, you know, in a legal case with a divorce before you and a drunk driver after you, right? It's business only, and the judges are sophisticated in business matters. And it's a perfect thing for Wyoming to specialize in basically code is law type of agreements. And the judge has to, by law, take the operating agreement in the form of code. The judge is going to have to go get a specialist. So that's something that some of you engineers might be called upon to interpret the code and translate it for a judge in court someday. It is going to happen. There will be disputes. There will be lawyers, you know, that specialize in DAO litigation. But anyway, all this, you know, probably the hardcore engineer cypherpunk types are saying, why are we bothering? But the answer is you're bothering because these things are attack vectors, whether you realize them or not, on your wealth and on your business. And so what you want to try to do is make it backwards compatible so that, you know, you can't have a lawyer or a judge, you know, come take your crypto away someday.
Yeah, 100%.
There's probably a really good a career path here for people who are interested in law and technology to be like professional witnesses, to just kind of like do the technical testifying in all these courts. So if anybody's interested, if you start now, you might be ready by the time the need really comes around.
Oh, totally. And I got to say, you know, I have enough knowledge of engineering to be dangerous. But when I spend a lot of time with the policy people, like the lawyers and economists in Washington, D.C., they do not understand code at all in most cases. They've just never rolled up sleeves and understood it. And yet they're the ones that are making the law. And, you know, look at the average age of the people in Congress, right? I mean, I don't know how many of them have ever traded crypto, but it's not very many. Yeah. And so the ones that have, obviously we cherish all of them. And it's fun because I just got a call from somebody, you know, on the opposite side of the political aisle of Senator Lummis from Wyoming. She tends to be more of a liberty-leaning Republican. And I got a call from a very liberal progressive who's going to try to flip the progressives to come towards crypto. And I'm going to spend time with her tomorrow. She's running for, I won't mention because I don't endorse candidates, but she's running for a big office. And I thought, what the heck, we need more people like her who are crypto friendly and who are willing to roll up sleeves. And I think we're going to see strange bedfellows in the political landscape. We already saw Senator Lummis and Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon try to they did join together to try to block the terrible language in the infrastructure bill. I don't think those two would agree on pretty much anything else except for crypto, right? And so if you kind of get some single issue voters in there who are like, well, I'll take them from wherever on the spectrum politically they are, as long as they believe in crypto, we start building up a coalition. That's pretty cool, and it's happening. It's definitely happening, and over in the next 10 years, you're going to see, I think, a realignment based on who believes in crypto and who doesn't.
Yeah, because crypto advocates are on the most affluent, informed, passionate. Like it's not the kind of hive you necessarily want to kick, because there's a lot of people who really care about it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it would be cool to maybe zoom out and kind of give an overview of all of the amazing stuff, or at least we can touch upon sort of whatever jumps out at you that's happening in Wyoming. So kind of the pitch I've been giving people is, as I perceive it, so please steer me back on track here. Wyoming is a very sort of like forward-looking state. And for example, the first LLC was created in Wyoming. Wyoming had the first, I think, female governor. The largest number of billionaires per capita, I believe, is in Wyoming. There's just a lot of wealth. There's a lot of wealth in Wyoming. There's a lot of smart people in Wyoming. Like when you pull onto the University of Wyoming's campus, for example, you immediately get a sense of like, okay, this is definitely for real. And so I think now 65% of the LLCs which are created in the United States are probably done over LegalZoom, and they're all done in Delaware. If you've ever done a startup and created an LLC at a little hackathon, chances are you use LegalZoom and you did Delaware. So as she mentioned, as of July, I believe this year, July or June, you can officially incorporate a DAO in Wyoming, but there's been more than that. I believe Tyler told us there's been 24 different acts of legislation which have passed to make cryptocurrency, Wyoming, like a crypto haven. So do you have a sense, do any jump out at your mind? What are some other exciting things that are in that basket of 24?
Well, again, given that this audience here is as developers, one of the cool things is Wyoming has a code is law. It's a First Amendment protection for software developers, that code is speech. And so as long as you're not using your code nefariously, if you write code, then you're not responsible for how someone else uses it. The people who are responsible to use it, the people who are using it to break the law, those are the criminals. It's not the developers that write the code. There is no law anywhere in the United States similar to that. When we got that legislation through, I say we because I was helping at the time. There were some of the legislators who were really afraid that that criminal law was not going to be able to be enforced, and you had the dark web type, the people who use code nefariously were going to be protected. And this is always going to be a problem. There were people who voted against the bill and narrowed it. We wanted all code to be speech and all code therefore to be protected. But they said, no, it's only only if you do not actually write malicious code will it be protected. But it really did say, look, the developers themselves are not going to be liable for the code. It's those who use it to break the law for open source code that are. So that one, Christopher Allen, who's one of the co-creators of the TLS standard, you guys probably all know him, very involved with the Linux Foundation. He was extremely involved in that one. He's also working on identity. We haven't done anything on identity yet. And I know that's one of the most difficult engineering problems out there. And like identity and voting, it just feels like those two, we haven't quite cracked the nut collectively in technology yet to those two, and they're of course going to be very interconnected. How do you prove unique identity, and how do you make it so that someone can't steal it? Yes, some of you are probably thinking it's possible, it's already been done, but not at scale yet. We haven't seen governments adopt it yet. So do not be surprised if Wyoming is one of the first places to adopt it. West Virginia did adopt a blockchain-based voting pilot, and then ended up because there were security issues that MIT had identified, not pushing it. They did it for overseas military voting at the time. This was a couple of years ago now. And then not much has happened because it's so darn hard to create something that's secure at scale. But these are really intractable problems, and I'm hoping that Wyoming breaks through on those. But other than that, most of the laws Wyoming passes are pretty standard and pretty simple. We recognize crypto as property. There's no tax on crypto in Wyoming. There's a clarification that money transmitters in crypto, the law doesn't apply. So you don't have to get a money transmitter license. You'll find that in most states, you do have to get a money transmitter license if you're transmitting value, especially if it's a custodial arrangement. In Wyoming, Wyoming's one of the few states where you don't. So a lot of those kinds of things have happened just to make it very practically a great place to do business for this industry, especially.
And are you seeing this become a blueprint which other places are trying to just take Wyoming's laws and drop them into their own legislation?
Yeah, I think we're up to 17 states that have passed at least one of Wyoming's laws. So you've correctly pointed out, Wyoming's been a pioneer in some of these things. When Wyoming gave women the right to vote in 1869, it took 50 years for the rest of the United States to catch up. And then when Wyoming invented the limited liability company as a new form of business entity to replace the corporation, that was in 1977. And it took 10 years for the rest of the United States to catch up. So I think you're going to see some of Wyoming's laws. You're already seeing it's taking less than 10 years. So when Wyoming leads, other states tend to follow. And that's
why do you think that is? As a local Wyoming person, why is Wyoming so aggressive and forward looking?
Well, you were here, so you got a little sense of it. The University of Wyoming's motto, it has two mottos. One, the world needs more cowboys, and the other is pertinent, bucking the system since 1886. So yeah. This is a place whose motto is bucking the system. So that ethos goes through here. I mean, you had Tyler on a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure he talked about his Food Freedom Act and also talked about Wyoming's commitment to privacy. It's the only state, I believe, that does not require you to disclose your identity when you set up an LLC. The law says that you have to disclose it to what's called your registered agent. So it's not like you're totally anonymous, because if the FBI needs to know who you are, they'll just go to your registered agent and give them a subpoena, and the registered agent will have to comply. But most of the registered agents are lawyers, so they're protected by something called attorney-client privilege, which means that you really do have to get a subpoena and prove probable cause in order to figure out the identity. And so Wyoming, there was a group called the Panama Papers about 5-6 years ago now, and there was a lot of wealth that was hidden, and the media went after all these people who were hiding their money as if that property wasn't actually the people's property. But nonetheless, I'm sure there was a lot that was nefarious as well. And Wyoming LLCs were all over the Panama Papers. And there were some people, because of the privacy aspects, and because of there were some people in Wyoming who were horrified by that, and tried to cause Wyoming to become more like other states and require that identities be disclosed when you form an LLC, and the state would have to collect that information. Keep in mind, there's no income tax in Wyoming, no state income tax in Wyoming. So the state of Wyoming doesn't know who you are and what your business is, unless you want to disclose that. Again, the registered agent is the one who knows it. So long story short, the legislature got back together because there was a push to try to require all that identity information to be collected by the state. And by a veto-proof majority, the Wyoming legislature said, no, we like our privacy, thanks very much. So unfortunately, they can't stop you from your bank requiring all of the disclosure of that information of what's called the beneficial owner. And Avanti is going to have to require you to disclose that information, because that's federal law. So the state can only go so far to protect privacy. The federal law does preempt in this area, unfortunately. But long story short, there's this ethos in Wyoming of kind of this of rugged individualism is another phrase you'll hear bandied about here. People are pretty self-sufficient. They want to be left alone, especially by the federal government. And so, yeah, there's a nice confluence of philosophies between decentralization and respect for property rights. So crypto just was another manifestation of that. And the legislators here really got it. They did understand at a visceral level the concept of true respect for property rights and decentralization.
Got it. And then what was your, I think somebody had told me when I was there, this is the fuzzy version of it, so please correct me, that you had wanted to make a donation to your alma mater in Bitcoin and that they were unable to accept it because it was a crypto, and they pointed you to Tyler. Is that how you connected with Tyler and got plugged into the whole journey?
Yeah, pretty close. Very good. Yeah, so it started with, I told you my dad was the electrical engineering department head at the University of Wyoming. So grew up in the college town, and I'm a failed engineer. And anyway, when Bitcoin started running up in 2017, I decided to donate some of it, pay it forward, to set up an endowment in my dad's memory for female engineers. And part of the reason it was specifically for female engineers is because of my experience. I should have stuck with it. I wasn't going to get straight A's, and calculus 2 was what got me. And anyway, this is a problem. As I was trying to hire engineers at Symbiont, we started to realize if you're trying to hire a female engineer, this is one of the few areas where the females are in such high demand. They actually, in many cases, make more money than the males because they're in such high demand. It was really hard to recruit, seriously. And so, I'm trying to solve the problem just privately. I didn't intend to have this become a public thing. And I ran, you're right, smack dab into Wyoming had a bad money transmitter law. It was one of the 3 states that required that the crypto companies had to hold a dollar for dollar reserve in addition to the value of the crypto they were transmitting on behalf of customers. So Coinbase and Circle and all those early exchanges had pulled out of Wyoming in 2015 due to Wyoming's bad law. And so by 2017, when I discovered this in my native state, I was in New York at the time, but this was my native state. And they couldn't, the University of Wyoming Foundation couldn't accept my Bitcoin donation because as a Wyoming corporation, nobody would do business with them due to Wyoming's bad law. And so I said, guys, we got to get this fixed. This Bitcoin thing is going to be a big deal. Let's roll up sleeves. I'll help you. I'll come out and, spend time with legislators. And it was just a passion project. Again, for somebody who's not an engineer, this is kind of how we can contribute to the open source, code. Law is an open source code. And it's just a different version of code, but it's in a different operating system, but it's code. And so somebody's got to help them write it. And that's what I did. And then Tyler Lindholm, I got connected to him through a college friend. And it turns out that somebody had donated Bitcoin to his campaign, I think in 2015. So he knew all about what it was. And then once he realized, he found a kindred spirit, he was the one who kept pushing me. I got to give him credit, that there's just, we could do so much more with this. What else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? And that first year, which was 2018, it was the legislative session in 2018. We formed the group in fall of 2017. And Tyler kept pushing me saying, let's get more done. So we got the money transmitter law fixed. I think that one went through unanimously, and then 4 more bills that year. And then I think 9 the next year, and then 6 the next year, and then 4 more last year, or whatever the numbers are. It's a juggernaut.
Can you imagine if you could go back and tell yourself the success that's going to happen over the next 3 years?
Oh man, I never, I just ran with it. It's a good lesson in life. You got to pivot. And it was so meaningful because you can tell I just really love Wyoming. It's just such a wonderful place. It is a citadel in so many ways. And Michael Saylor even talked about it when he did an hour-long interview, I think with Tucker Carlson or someone like that, a couple nights ago. And he started talking about citadels, and he named Wyoming. It's a place, one of the few states with no income tax. And that, again, this ethos here, it's just crypto fits. And so there are a lot of crypto people who are, if they're not moving here, they're at least domiciling their business here to take advantage of all the laws that we have. And I never would have thought it would have turned into this.
Yeah, that's another topic I wanted to touch on. So in the context of, you said you created I forget the verbiage, but in order to help female engineers, on ramp into the ecosystem. So I wonder if do you have a sense, and of course I anticipate you'll be humble here, but I would like your honest opinion here. Do you have a sense of the impact that your work is having, and perhaps how you'll be viewed in the future, or how other people are inspired by you, or anything like that? Does that ever cross your mind?
Oh gosh, no, honestly, because they don't do it for that. It's kind of, I'm more than a little uncomfortable with how much credit I'm getting, because of course, one person couldn't have done this.
Sure.
I just happen to have been a spark and brought together people who actually made it happen. And it's the legislators who have the power. I'm not an elected official. I never voted on any of it. I don't have I'm not an elected official. Yes, have I advised? Am I behind the dais as a non-voting member of these committees? Yes, but there are so many people who made it happen, and they're the ones who really deserve the credit, especially including the governors. Sure. Especially in the very early years, Governor Meade, it was 2017. At first, he was like, "Whoa, what is this thing?" And back then, if you think about what was happening, everybody was like, "It's just for drug dealers and dark web gambling and that stuff." And so we had a lot of educating to do. But I must hand the credit to the people of the state of Wyoming who wanted to do this, because it's their legislators who did it. Yeah.
I expected you to be humble. Nicely done. You answered what I expected. So,
I am proud. There are a lot of female engineers have gotten scholarships and just extra money to help. It's several dozen a year that are getting some money. And I'm just hoping that it keeps them in. Is it personal? Yeah, because I watched how few women even start in the STEM field, and then a lot drop out. And I'm one who did start and dropped out. Thinking back in my situation, what could have been done differently? I don't know if it was tutoring. I don't know if it was support groups. Just the whole idea that you come out of high school doing really well, and then get into college and realize this stuff's really hard. And I did not make that transition very well, but it all worked out well for me. So
sure. Yeah. And to touch on your other part, you had mentioned something about, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you had mentioned to get, to have people either move to Wyoming or domicile in Wyoming. And so it appears to me from the outside that is being successful, because there have been a couple large companies. Didn't IOHK relocate from Hong Kong to Wyoming? And then they were the
first.
Yeah, yep. I'm sure you know more than me. There were a handful of companies when I was at the Wyo Hackathon. One of them, who I just can't remember his name, I apologize, man. It was a video game startup, but they just relocated from NYC to Cheyenne. So they literally left New York City, not just New York the state. They left NYC for Cheyenne. So I think you're already being successful in that regard. I know myself. I want to buy a ranch in Wyoming. I want to put down roots there. I feel like there's something amazing that's happening there, and I can project forward and see how it plays out over time. More and more people putting down roots there today just lead to a better network effect of ecosystem. There's going to be more startups and more money and more players, and definitely huge impact.
Oh yeah, I don't even know what the numbers are. It's well over 1,000 companies now that have like Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto, those kinds of names if you keyword search the Secretary of State's database. But keep in mind, we don't want a database of this, right? So I can't quantify for you exactly how many companies have come here. It's a feature, not a bug, that I can't do that, precisely because you have your own privacy. You don't have to disclose yourself. If you want to, great. And there is an active community here. There are Bitcoin and blockchain meetups in Cheyenne and Jackson Hole that I know of, but there are miners all over the state. Literally, some really big miners are quietly setting up shop here. And so, yeah, I'm hearing about it just through the grapevine. And I love the fact that I'm not a gatekeeper. No one has to tell me what you're doing. If you're here and you want to tell yourself, pop yourself up, great. Wyo Hackathon tends to be the place people do get together. And then like you said, Gabriel, you start learning, oh my gosh, there are businesses that actually did move here, not just, register here. So yeah, Wyoming really didn't spend any money on this. Yeah, they passed a few laws, but it's not like there's money associated with it. We do get people occasionally asking, is there, kind of relocation grants and things like that? The answer is no, there's not, because the state doesn't have an income tax. Again, feature, not a bug. You don't want to end up going to a state that's going to pay you to relocate, because once they pay you to relocate, it's the old saying, a government big enough to give you what you want is big enough to take away everything you have, right? So you really don't want a big government. And again, the ethos here is the budget in the state of Wyoming is it's a boom bust economy because of the energy economy, but it's one of 2 states that actually has a surplus. When you move here, you're implicitly every person who's living in a state either has implicit debt or implicit assets to their name. In 48 United States, you've all got implicit debt to your name. In Wyoming, you've got implicit assets to your name. And what that means is basically, there's a slush fund to pay for the schools. And that's why there's no state income tax here. And property taxes are very, very low. When I moved here from the New York City area, pretty much everything went down by about 60%. In terms of my cost of living, my property taxes, my just even buying a beer or a glass of wine at the restaurants, it's just a lot cheaper here than it is in the high cost cities for sure.
And do you get a sense that the pace of legislation is accelerating or decelerating? Are things heating up, or has the bulk of the work been done?
I think the bulk of the work's been done. The most important stuff, like defining the property rights in crypto, you don't need to keep refining that. It's a one and done kind of thing. There will definitely be a number of bills that go through every year for the special purpose depository institutions. And I should mention that, there's a lot on Wyoming's plate, a lot at stake for Wyoming to win on these special purpose depository institutions, because there are some very large companies that want to move to Wyoming, and they're watching what's happening with Kraken and Avanti as we get through the Fed. And it's not been easy. They've been, the regulators have changed the rules on us now 3 times. And so, it's the oldest child syndrome, right? The oldest child is the one who—
That's so challenging as a startup.
But
as a startup, how do you even budget your runway if you've got legislation rug pulling 3 times? That's crazy.
Yeah, well, and I suspect it's not over. But, we were able to raise a lot of money. We raised $44 million, and thank goodness. And by the way, a lot of crypto OGs, some of whom are publicly disclosed, some of whom are not. Trace Mayer is the guy who put together the consortium that led our Series A. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And part of his thought process is we just need more banks in this industry who are friendly to this industry, who are specializing from a compliance perspective and what it's going to take to serve the good companies and good people in this industry who are going to pass, all the compliance reviews, right? Somebody who's doing sketchy stuff isn't going to pass the compliance reviews. But there are a lot of good startups that unfortunately hit the wall in 2017 because their bank closed their bank account, and Silvergate couldn't onboard customers fast enough to keep some of these startups going. We heard a lot of testimony from startups that flocked to Wyoming in the legislative hearings to tell their stories about how they lost their bank accounts. And it's just, it's just wrong. It's unfortunate because some really great businesses went out of business simply because they lost their bank accounts. So yeah, again, harden your business for this. Avanti is going to be open in 2022. We're one of the banks that isn't going to abandon this industry for sure. But most really, it's kind of common risk management practice at this point that most of the startups actually have more than one bank account, as painful as that is. It protects you from that attack vector.
Sure.
So I want to jump in here and ask a builder question.
Yeah.
You're building a bank. So I understand when you launch when you build a software startup, you start with a product, you start writing code. Yeah. How does one build a bank? What do you do on day one when you're we're doing this? I understand there's the paperwork and legal side of this, but are you guys building products for managing all of the money transmission and storing it? What goes into building a bank? I just have no idea.
Well, I've learned a lot and I have the answers. And basically, unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than you think. Just to be able to launch a US dollar service, we have basically 7 different products that the engineers have had to build. So just to be able to provide US dollar services to customers, it's a lot. And I'll say this, you guys are all familiar with Bitcoin by definition. You can spin up a Bitcoin node and start running a full node that's fully synced within a few hours. It's a fairly lightweight exercise. To integrate with the US dollar payment systems is a minimum of months, minimum. So, I mean, I know which technology is going to win just on that basis alone. Just that, you know, the financial services industry is so interested in building these walled gardens and all these bells and whistles. And you know what they sacrifice when they do that? Interoperability. So yeah, we're going to have, we won't have the customer facing APIs exposed right away, but we will be exposing customer facing APIs. So you can write your own software to direct your own US dollar payments, as long as you know, again, pass the customer checks, right? It's funny because I'll share Brian Bishop, our CTO. One of the reasons he's a Bitcoin Core guy, you know, he's also the guy who has archived the Bitcoin Core developer meetings because he live types meetings while he's participating in them. I've never seen anything like it. And thank goodness we have him in the industry, because he's literally got the archive of every meeting, so you can trace the history of Bitcoin Core development. But anyway, the reason I bring him up is his concept of wanting to work for a bank, which of course most developers never will, right? You want to avoid it like a plague from a professional perspective, because you're trying to disrupt the banking industry. So why did a Bitcoin Core developer agree to become CTO of Avanti and a co-founder with me? And the answer is very simple. He wanted to be able to write software to pay his bills. Very simple. And you didn't understand why you couldn't do that. And with us, you know, we're only serving businesses. We won't be serving consumers because the compliance requirements to serve consumers are massively higher than the compliance requirements to serve businesses. But we will be serving the companies that face consumers in this industry. And so just being able to offer API-based US dollar services is itself a pretty exciting thing, even if we were never doing anything in crypto, like the stablecoin, like custody. Just offering an API, a customer-facing API, to, you know, at some level, you kind of wonder, why does a company like Stripe exist? Should it exist? Would it need to exist if the banks were actually doing their job? It's an existential question for, you know, some of the banks, but it tells you just how outdated that technology is. And some of it is the regulation. Again, back to the analogy of everybody gets mad at the airlines when the flights are delayed, but it's not always it's in most cases not their fault. It's the regulations that cause the problems.
You're talking to one of the people, not myself, but Connor, who has probably felt that pain more than anybody I personally know, building this NFT marketplace and dealing with US dollar payments. It's been a journey for him, man. I've been seeing this guy go through it.
Yeah, well, and I think there's going to be a lot.
So I like to say,
a little bit of a lag. Go for it, Connor.
Yeah, so I like to say that I think crypto's worst case scenario. You know, we might not, you know, take over all of social media or like reinvent funding the arts. If that doesn't take off, the worst case scenario is we just replace all of the back end financial infrastructure in the world, because working with payment processors and stuff, trying to do credit card payments, they take 2 days to clear. You know, then ACHs, that's another can of worms. International wires, that's just domestic. Now you go international, like every country has their own kind of form of ACH. Like, and now we have, you know, 3DS requirements in the European Union. It's just, the explosion is so large. And if we just get credit cards that just under the hood are just transmitting USDC or whatever, or Bitcoin or whatever technology you want, like that's a very feasible thing that just is just kind of replacing technology that is very, very, you know, not consumer oriented. Like that's the worst case scenario.
Yep. And there's so much low hanging fruit, but to get that bank charter and to get the approval is brutally difficult. As Nick Carter points out, there aren't very many of those. It's really hard to get one.
That's why you're going to go down history. That's the step. That's the big step. That's the step that so many other people are not going to do. Right. That's the deal. Yeah.
Well, and it's like we talked about in Laramie in September at the hackathon, because we're talking about the stable coins, right? This is exactly the use case for the stable coins. The stable coin technology settles a US dollar in minutes with irreversibility. There are a lot of use cases where that's valuable, not just in crypto trading. And I think that, you know, that's why Congress and the bank regulators were so threatened by Facebook Libra because they recognized it could very quickly obsolete the backwards banking system, and so they've slowed it down. And so now we're trying to get inside the banking system and do it within their rules. And yes, they keep, that they're definitely, the incumbents have thrown sand in our wheels, but we're pretty intrepid and tenacious, and we're figuring it out. And ultimately, if we can expose the APIs and customers can use them, the stablecoin regulation is going to be, I think, different. They want the issuer itself to be the bank, but there's so much that can be built, and this is what we were talking about, Gabriel, in September. There's so much can be done just by us putting it out there and being sort of the back, we being the back end. We're the ones that will issue it. So just to be clear, our proposal is to issue our Avid product on Liquid, which is a side chain of Bitcoin, and Ethereum. Why did we pick those two? Because Bitcoin's the most secure right now, the longest proven security, and Ethereum is right now the market standard. We have to use more than one for risk management purposes, because if one of them goes down, we've got to be able to burn the tokens and reissue them on the other. So unlike New York, which only allows really the New York trust companies that are issuing stablecoins are only doing them on Ethereum, we are required to choose two, and we're going to go slow, right? I mean, the regulators are making us prove that this is secure. So it's gonna take time. But all that said, we haven't talked much about smart contracts. I did a detour after I left Morgan Stanley to Symbiont, which is an enterprise smart contract platform, and so I've seen the use of enterprise smart contracts, and I'm a big believer in smart contracts. So I actually do believe that's something different than Bitcoin. And so I stay out of that debate, because to me, the smart contract world is different than Bitcoin. And the two obviously coexist. And there's powerful technology in smart contracts that can automate a lot of manual functions. And I'm a big believer that is going to be enormously valuable technology in mainstream financial services. What I thought in 2016 was that the mainstream world would go through the walled garden period and then go to the, it's like intranet and then internet. We'll do the walled gardens first, and then eventually we'll use the open source backends. What I missed was that Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market would become so popular among the moneyed class that it kind of skipped over the enterprise versions. And some of the companies that were really hot companies in 2015, 2016 were the enterprise blockchain companies. You just don't hear very much about them anymore, because it's the open source permissionless world that's taken over. And I love smart contracts technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it has been 1 hour exactly.
Yeah.
Extremely respectful of your time. So thank you so much for joining us, Caitlin. Wow, that was amazing. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and truly, truly, truly one of my favorite people in the entire space. Thank you for everything that you do. You're an absolute
Thank you. Likewise.
star. Yeah, you're an absolute rock star, and I know your work is going to have a huge impact. So please keep it up, and thank you so much. You're welcome anytime. If you ever want to plug anything or just chat, obviously let me know. You can come back anytime.
Awesome, when you're ready to announce Avalanche with Avanti, come back, we'll break the news here.
Hey, we're watching, we're keeping an eye on everything that's going on in the space. You're going to see the banks walk, more slowly than companies that are not regulated. It's just the nature of the beast. But we really are friendly to this industry, and really are here to serve the industry. So keep your eyes open for our launch date announcement. It won't be before the end of the year that we'll talk about it, but it's coming soon. So
okay.
Thanks so much, everybody.
So now Caitlin is fantastic on Twitter, and everybody here should definitely give her a follow. I've learned a ton from your account. So where can people follow you on Twitter?
Oh, at Caitlin Long _. I also post on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of the mainstream financial people talk. I know. It's a different audience. And then of course, AvantiBank.com.
I'll put all the links below for the YouTube crowd, of course. Any last minute thoughts at all? Do you want to shout out to your team? Anything?
Oh, well, of course, shout out to the team. They are working their butts off. It's wait till you see what we're producing. It's going to take a little while. It's just like any technology. It's going to take a little while So I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but we are going to be bringing things that are different to this industry. Give us some time, but we are, I think, going to help solve some problems for this industry for sure. Thanks, everybody. Best wishes to you all.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Connor, thank you, my friend. Have safe travels. Do you have any last minute thoughts?
No, yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter at das_Connor, DAS_CONNOR.
All right, thank you, everybody. As I mentioned, my name is Gabriel Cardona. You can follow me on Twitter at CG Cardona. That's CGCARDONA. And as always, thank you so much. If you made it this far, you're an absolute champion. We will be back next week. And so, as always, from snowflake to avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.